Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, the Azerbaijan Grand Preview video. In this video, we're going to have a look through all the latest news headlines. We're going to have a look at Upgrade Corner. We're going to have a look at the free practice roundup. We're going to make our predictions as well, the predictions that have never been wrong. The only predictions on YouTube that have never been wrong. But there is big news before we get into anything, and it is devastating news, and it's that for the first time this year, there's no special helmet street this weekend. Not one driver has brought a special helmet to the race this weekend, so no special helmet street, but still a hell of a lot to talk about. Loads of news to go through that's happened in the past week. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Those are the rules, and a huge shout out to our members, Dakota, the Joyous James, Robin Myers, and Cinnamon Strudel. If you want to become a member, link in the description. From prices as low as 99 pence. I mean, you don't get much for 99p these days, but you can become a member of Stop and Go F1. Now, let's get into the video, and the biggest news of the week, of course, is that news surrounding Adrian Newey. It's officially been announced that he will be part of Aston Martin, starting from, I think, a couple of months into 2025, with the main focus being on the 2026 car. Now, we already have made a video on that. If you want to go see that, watch that after this one. It's on the channel, breaking down all the details of how I think it's going to go, what it means, all that kind of stuff. That's on there. So if you want to see that, it's already out. But there is a few things that have come out since then that I think are interesting to talk about. Starting with Fernando Alonso, who apparently, when he was first told that Aston were looking to sign Newey, offered to pay 20% of his own salary to help Aston Martin sign Adrian Newey. I don't think they've gone through with this, but it shows that Fernando Alonso is desperate to have Adrian Newey on board to try and get a car that can go back to the front of the grid, try and get him that elusive 33rd win, and who knows, maybe even a third world title. I was looking it up the other day. If Alonso won the 2026 World Championship, that would be 20 years between championships. So I thought, wow, what is the record for gaps between championships? And I think at the moment it is held by Niki Lauda, and it is 6 years. So if Alonso was to break that with a 20-year gap between championships, that would be absolutely massive. I don't think, though, he would be the oldest ever world champion, because I think he would be about 45, maybe, and I think Fangio, to the later one of his championships, he was around that age as well, so it would be close. He might get it, but we'd have to wait and see. So Alonso, desperate for Newey to come on board to help him become the oldest ever Formula One world champion, but it might not be too easy for Fernando Alonso. Because right now, Alonso's had it quite nice, where his teammate has been Lance Stroll, and 9 times out of 10, on a race day, he will beat him. But even with Lawrence Stroll owning the team and his son being Lance Stroll, it's not for sure that Lance Stroll will be in the Aston Martin in 2026. This is speculation coming out of Aston Martin at the minute that Lawrence Stroll has set his sights on one Max Verstappen. Talks to make this happen are reportedly already in progress. Italian publication Autosprint, which correctly called Newey's Aston Martin, also now claims that Stroll is aiming for Verstappen with a view to bring him in for 2026, with Lance Stroll being diverted onto the Aston Martin World Endurance Championship program in order to make space for Verstappen. So this here is huge. Can you imagine a Alonso Verstappen pairing in Aston Martin with Adrian Newey under exclusive Honda engine contract? That would be massive. So, you know, two of my favourite drivers on the grid right now are Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso. So to see them together in a team, I think would be great. But then I think about it a little bit more. Because when I was a young man, my favourite 2 drivers on the grid were Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso. And all I wanted in the world was a team pairing of Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso. And my dreams came true, and I thought, this is gonna be the best. And they got given the worst McLaren car that has ever been made in the history of McLaren. And the dream very, very quickly turned into a nightmare. So, you know what? Even if we get this team pairing, I'm not counting my chickens until they hatch. We'll see how it goes. You know, before today, I would have said, yeah, that could maybe happen because Red Bull were in a bad place. But today has been a very good day for Red Bull. We'll talk about it later on. Let's have a look now towards this weekend. And one of the big things we have to know before we enter this weekend is, of course, Kevin Magnussen is not there. He has collected 12 penalty points over the last 12 months, meaning he has received a race ban. And his replacement is one Oliver Bearman, which it doesn't come as a shock to anyone there. I think everyone kind of saw that coming as to his replacement. But so far, so good for Ollie Bearman. He's looked good in both practice sessions. Of course, this is his second outing in Formula 1 this year. He replaced Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and now here to replace Kevin Magnussen before he makes his proper full-time appearance in the Haas at the start of next season. But best of luck to Ollie. I saw today, apparently, if he can score points this weekend, he'll be the first driver ever to score points in consecutive their first two races when they've driven for two different teams, which is an incredibly specific record. And the only person I can think of who also had their first two races being for two different teams, off the top of my head, is Gilles Villeneuve. Because I'm sure his first race was for McLaren, and his second race was for Ferrari. I guess he didn't score points in one of them. I'm going to look it up right now. Leave a note in the comments if you can think of a driver who their first two races were for different teams. So Gilles Villeneuve, his first race was the 1977 British Grand Prix, which he drove for McLaren, and he finished in 11th, so no points there. His second race was the 1977 Canadian Grand Prix, which he drove for Ferrari, and there was a crash. So no points in either there, but that was the only driver off the top of my head I could think of who had their first two races with two different constructors. Let me know if you can think of a different one there. Meanwhile, let's have a quick focus on Formula 2, because Ollie Bearman is not competing in Formula 2 this weekend, similar to how in Saudi he wasn't competing there. So Prima have called up Gabriele Mini. He's just finished runner-up in Formula 3. The Formula 3 season is done. So Gabriele Mini is replacing Oliver Bearman for this weekend in Formula 2 alongside Kimi Antonelli. And so far, Mini has looked fantastic. I think he's fifth in qualifying, looking very good, not too far off the back of Kimi Antonelli. So that's a great look for Gabriele Mini, the first time he's in this Formula 2 car and looking great. But it is a debut weekend in Formula 2 for a different Formula 3 championship protagonist, and that was Christian Mansell. No relation to Nigel. He has joined the Trident team in F2. He's replacing Roman Stanek. He's had his first race weekend this weekend, and he qualified 10th, which means he will be on sprint pole. But that's still not the end of the people who are joining Formula 2 this weekend, because Zach O'Sullivan has been dropped from ART due to lack of funding, and he's been replaced by a different championship protagonist of Formula 3, Luke Browning. So another Williams Academy driver, I believe, in Luke Browning. So he is in this weekend. I can't remember how he did. I don't think he was in the top 10, unless I'm very much mistaken. I will double check now. But what the mad thing here is we went into the Formula 3 season end a couple of weeks ago in Monza, and there was 4 guys who could win the title. Out of the 4 guys who could win the title, 3 of them are in Formula 2 this weekend. But none of the 3 are the ones who actually won the title. So let's have a look. Luke Browning, where did he finish? 11th. So he just missed out on that sprint pole, and it was very close as well. So Luke Browning doing well there. But, like I said, there was someone who missed out on being in Formula 2 this year, and that is Leo Fornaroli, our current Formula 3 champion. But he will be in Formula 2 next year. He has been confirmed to be joining in Vitica Racing for Formula 2 next year. He was the first driver announced for Formula 2 in 2025. He'll either replace Kushmaini or Gabriel Bortoletto. That hasn't been confirmed yet. Also, Arvid Lindblad has been confirmed for Formula 2 next year as well, joining Campos. So he will replace either Hadjar or Marty, probably Hadjar. Right, that's enough F2 and F3. Let's go back to F1 and talk about McLaren, because since the Italian Grand Prix, every conversation about McLaren has been around papaya rules, which is the worst thing that's ever been said in the history of motor racing, and team orders, and should they use them, should they not use them, what's going on there. So a statement has been made this weekend, coming from the lips of the McLaren team principal, who I always forget the name of, because he's either Andrea Stella or the other one. It is Andrea Stella, I've just seen it in my notes here. So here is what he's had to say around about team orders this weekend. We will bias our support to Lando, but we want to do it without too much compromise in our principles. Our principles is that the team's interests always come first. We want to be fair to both drivers. We don't want to see anyone in a situation like in Monza, in which we enter a chicane P1 and P2 and we exit P1 and P3, but that is a deterrent to the team. The conversations with Oscar have been very collaborative. Even when I say to Oscar, would you be able to give up a victory? He said, it's painful, but if it's the right thing to do, I will do it. Every driver is hardwired to go for a victory, so I'm very impressed by the level of team spirit and maturity and collaboration we have found in this period. So, let's break this down here, because I've seen a lot of people see this and go, there we go. They've decided to introduce team orders and they will back Lando 100% of the way. And I see that and I go, I'm not too sure. Because they say at the top, we will bias our support to Lando. But then every word after that sentence says the opposite. To me, it still screams that they really, really don't want to do it. And then they've been pressed on it more and more and more. I saw at one point, I think it was one of the Sky guys was talking to Stella and said, if Piastri is 10 seconds ahead of Lando, will you get him to swap? And he went, no, he won't do that. It's like, okay, so what are you prepared to do? What have you said? Have you said don't challenge each other? Because it doesn't sound like you said don't challenge each other. You've said, oh, Oscar, would you be prepared to give up a victory? And he hasn't said, yes, I will. He'd say, if it's the right thing to do, I will do it. So there's an out there already. So this entire thing about McLaren team orders, I still feel we are in the exact same place we were 2 weeks ago. They've said this, but I really don't think they mean it. And if it does appear this weekend, I don't think it's going to be as easy as Oscar move over, here comes Lando, or don't attack Lando. We might see a thing where if it's late in the race and Piastri is in the same area as Lando, but behind him, we might see a thing of don't attack. We've seen McLaren do that before in Italy in 2021, but I don't see them telling Oscar to give up a position. I don't think they can do it. I really think they are lacking that little bit there. And, it's been the main topic of conversation all weekend. Like, when you listen to the practice sessions, it's all they're talking about. And I hear people go, these great championship winning teams, like the Ferrari with Schumacher and Barrichello, or the Mercedes of Hamilton and Bottas, or Red Bull with Verstappen and Perez. And I saw someone online sum it up perfectly. They said, everyone wants Piastri to be Bottas, but Norris isn't Hamilton. And I think that has summed it up perfectly, because Norris is great, and I don't want to take anything away from him. He's a fantastic driver, but I don't think he is on that upper level just yet. And Piastri is close to him, and he's getting closer every single race. And then we add on another layer to this race weekend. Firstly, of course, Max Verstappen was asked about this, and his response, I think, is beautiful. He said, if you look at it from Oscar's perspective, he is closer to Lando than Lando is to me, which is true in terms of points. I think that is what he is talking about there. In terms of championship points, Oscar's gap to Lando is smaller than Lando's gap to Max. Now, of course, Lando is the closest to Max, so that's what they're looking at in terms of a title perspective. But in terms of points, Oscar could still beat Lando this year. And what a statement that would be for him in his second year in Formula One. So you can see it from that perspective there. But then another layer comes on top of this. Red Bull have brought a brand new floor to the RB20 this weekend. It's not classed as an upgrade, but instead a combination of older specifications. So far, this feedback has been positive. Not only are Red Bull aiming for more pace, but also an improved balance. So far, from the practice sessions that we have seen, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but Red Bull are back on pace. They're not dominating like they were, but they are in contention. Those four top teams, I think, this weekend are the closest they have been all year. I don't think Red Bull are on the back foot anymore. They're in there. They're in the mix. And all Max Verstappen needs to be is in the mix, and he can go for wins. So this is too late for McLaren. It's too late. They had their space of races where Red Bull were on the back foot and they were the fastest car. And due to lack of strategic advantage in the eyes of the McLaren team principals, due to Lando Norris sometimes not being on it to the best of his ability, they have squandered the opportunity. There has been a few races now where Red Bull have not been good enough and McLaren have had the fastest car. And they won what? One race? I mean, let's go. Actually, we'll go further back. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. I think the last time Red Bull, honestly, was the fastest car outright was maybe Imola. Maybe back further than that. Who knows? Let's say Imola, though. In the gap between Imola and now, McLaren have won 2 races and Red Bull have won 3. So it's just like, in the space you had, where Red Bull were struggling, they did not capitalise on it at all. And now they're going, oh yeah, now we're prepared to win a championship. It's too late. Red Bull have figured out their issue, it seems. They're back up there hunting with you. They were giving you the golden opportunity and you've squandered it. You gave it away in Italy because you got out-strategized by Ferrari, of all places. In the Dutch Grand Prix, perfect. Did a great job in the Dutch Grand Prix. If we go further back than that, though, what was even before the Dutch Grand Prix? My mind's going. The Belgian Grand Prix. You know, Oscar did a good job, but Lando was nowhere in the Dutch Grand Prix. In that race, Max started 11th and beat him. You go back to Hungary, and my God, they won that race, but what a mess. In the British Grand Prix, they focused on Lando. They did, because there was the whole thing where it went from was it from wet to dry or dry to wet, one or the other, and they should have double stacked like Mercedes did, but they didn't, and they prioritised Lando. And then when they did that, they still messed up on the tyres, and Piastri, who was the faster of the 2 McLarens, was left out on the wrong tyres for an entire lap, lost about 30 seconds, then came back through, so they squandered that one massively. In Austria, well, we all know what happened in Austria. In Spain, they just weren't on it. In Canada, I have no idea how Max won that one. And then you have Monaco, where it was, Ferrari were spectacular, but again, where was Lando in Monaco? You had Piastri again, who in only his second Monaco Grand Prix was very close to claiming pole, and then finished in P2. So if you look from Imola to now, it is just race after race after race, where you can point out McLaren messed up here, or Lando wasn't on it here. And that was your golden opportunity. Those races were the ones where you can claim those points back, and they didn't. If anything, they're saying now, now we will prioritise Lando. You've been prioritising him for 2 years. You've screwed over Piastri so many times. Let's not forget, the reason the whole mess happened in Hungary is because Piastri was in the lead and they still didn't prioritise him. If they prioritised him from the start, we would have actually had a race for the lead in Hungary. If they had treated them equally in the British Grand Prix, Piastri could have won with the pace he was on at the end. You know, this whole thing of, oh, but look, Lando's further ahead in the points. Yeah, because McLaren keep on messing it up all the time. It's just madness. Just watching McLaren somehow stumble themselves into thinking they're in a title fight when, yeah, in the constructors maybe, in the drivers they're not. The thing is, they've got two fantastic drivers, they've got a fantastic car, but they've got a team of people who don't know what they're doing when it comes to managing the drivers on the track. And it annoys me so much because they should be in such a better position. Piastri has been screwed multiple times here, and it looks like, I wouldn't be surprised if they do some kind of ridiculous team order this weekend just to prove to the world that they can do it. But it's just utter madness, and the papaya rules thing means nothing to begin with. And we're just going round in circles here now with just this McLaren rubbish that means nothing. I don't know what they're doing, because if Red Bull, if their pace in practice is to be believed, and Max is now back at the front, we're going to look back at this and go, oh, well, you know, now, and then when Red Bull came back with their new floor, there was nothing really McLaren could do. But then you go, there is! There was loads they could do, and they didn't do it. And like McLaren are being scrutinised under this whole should they not implement team orders thing, when there are 100 other things that the finger needs to be pointed at, and they're just being ignored. I mean, honestly, I could go through this entire year and point out time after time after time that McLaren have messed this up. And who knows, that might be a video we do later down the line. But there is so many points that McLaren have just thrown away. And if you want to talk about McLaren being a team who can win world titles, they're not that right now. Let's go back to our last proper title battle we had. Now, I know for the first half of 2022 it was close between Leclerc and Verstappen. I mean, Leclerc was leading by like 40-odd points at one point. But let's go back to 2021. That lovely year that everyone likes to remember, that everyone was happy with all the way through for sure, right? You had Mercedes and Hamilton and Red Bull and Verstappen, and they were going at it every single race. If either Mercedes or Red Bull had made one of the mistakes that McLaren has made this year, it would be remembered forever as a huge dropping of the ball in a championship battle, because both of them pretty much made no mistakes all the way through the year in terms of strategy, in terms of running the team. And now we have this supposed championship battle, which I still don't believe is a championship battle. And you've got Red Bull, who are doing pretty well. Their car has fallen off. There's no doubt about that. The rest of the teams are caught up, but they're still making good decisions. And you've got McLaren, who have somehow got a fast car, but haven't got a clue what they're doing with it. So it just drives me up the wall looking at McLaren at the minute. I don't even know what to say anymore. I think I've said everything I need to say. A video on every mistake McLaren made coming soon, I guess. Right, let's move on. Let's talk about potentially 2025. We've spoken about this briefly before. The only seat which is open at the minute is the one in the Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber team. Of course, Hulkenberg's been signed there, but there's a vacancy in the other seat. Apparently, it is between Bottas or Gabriel Bortoleto as to who gets that seat. Bortoleto currently looking to become Formula 2 champion, and after qualifying today, it looks like, you know, he's getting a little bit closer there. But I said previously, the only thing that's kind of holding him back is that he's part of that McLaren Junior Academy. But news comes out this week that the Brazilian F2 driver Gabriel Bortoleto has received the green light by McLaren to enter talks with Stake F1 Team / Audi for 2025. The only caveat on that being, that McLaren want to have the option to retain him and bring him back if Norris or Piastri was to leave the team in the future. So this is great news for Bortoleto for if he can get into Formula 1 next year, because it looks like he has got a golden opportunity to jump into that team. But there, this is actually a good decision by McLaren after my rant of their bad decisions. But yeah, I'd love to see Bortoleto in Formula 1. I think he's been absolutely fantastic, not just this year, but last year as well in Formula 3. He has been great. His rival for the seat is looking to be Valtteri Bottas. Statements come out from him this weekend saying, options are limited for me, but this is how it is. I've had to have a think about it. What if I am not in Formula 1 next year? Negotiations are still active between the Finn and the new Audi team boss Mattia Binotto, with the two most recently meeting at the Italian Grand Prix. I think this is still Bottas saying this, sorry. Said, we started the discussions with good respect and in a positive way. I think he really understands what he can get out of me for the team, and if I can get involved in a project for the year ahead, which is interesting. A car manufacturer, and then I'm interested in as well. Okay. So, yeah, Bottas potentially not in Formula 1 next year. I've also seen a rumour today that he's in talks with Prema to join their IndyCar team, potentially for next year, if he cannot continue in Formula 1. So that is one to definitely keep an eye on as terms for the Take F1 team Kick Sauber seat for 2025. Yeah, it'd be sad to see Bottas lead, but if it's to let Bortoleto in, I think Bortoleto is this dark horse of a Formula 1 driver, just a driver in general, where, you know, he entered Formula 3 and I didn't really see much big press about him, and then he just went on to win the championship with ease. Joined Formula 2 and I was like, oh yeah, he's the Formula 3 champion, let's see how he gets on, and then he's just been amazingly consistent, and now is, despite being 10 points off the lead, championship lead, well, 10.5 points. I think you could say that he could be the favourite with the performances he's had recently, especially Hadjar seems to be throwing it away in the last couple of races. So, Bortoleto, fantastic driver, hopefully can do something good in the future in a stake F1 team Kick Sauber car. Right, moving on. Last bit of news before we go on to Upgrade Corner. The FIA has announced that all 10 F1 teams adhered to the cost cap regulations for 2023, so no cost cap drama in terms of there. But here's something interesting for you. Among the power unit manufacturers, Alpine and Honda were deemed to have made procedural breaches, though they did not go over the cost cap. Those breaches will be resolved through an accepted breach agreement. So no information on what those breaches are. But what is mad here is Alpine. How the hell have you done this? So Alpine have made an engine for 2026. It is so bad that the Alpine team refuses to use it and is looking at maybe having Mercedes power. But not only have they made an engine so bad that they don't want to use it, they also broke the rules whilst making it. How do you break the rules and still be so awful? How is that possible, Alpine? How have you done this? But yeah, Honda as well. It'd be interesting if they actually told us what this was. A bit, you know, that's a thing of Formula 1 we have all the time. Where's the clarity around what's going on here? But yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll find out. But there may be punishments down the line. Right, Upgrade Corner. I know my rant on McLaren went very long. We're almost at the half an hour mark already. We haven't even talked about free practice yet. So only 3 teams brought upgrades this weekend. Red Bull have brought their floor, which seems to be helping them quite a bit. Rumours surrounding that a big upgrade package for them will come at the Austin Grand Prix, so that is one to look out for. Aston Martin, new rear corner for them, and then the Racing Bulls have brought a circuit-specific front wing. So something interesting there. As I said, no special helmet street today, which is a big shame. Hopefully, it'll be better next weekend in Singapore. That is one that drivers like to bring special helmets to, so I won't be surprised if we get some good stuff in Singapore. So next week for that one. But let's have a look at free practice. And free practice 1 very much interrupted. A lot of red flags. 3 red flags, in fact, in free practice 1. Firstly, there was some debris on the track, which I don't think deserved a red flag. That was the first red flag. The second red flag was Charles Leclerc once again hitting the walls in Baku, one of his favourite hobbies. Every year, Leclerc likes to hit the walls. But if you're going to hit the walls, do it in free practice, not in qualifying or the race. Then the third and final red flag was for Franco Colapinto, who also crashed. But at the end of it, it was Max Verstappen on top, Lewis Hamilton in second place, 3 tenths off, then Sergio Perez in third. Now, Sergio Perez loves this track incredibly, and I didn't realise this until this week. But statistically, Sergio Perez is the greatest driver to ever race at Baku. He has the most amount of wins out of everyone, with 2. Everyone else has only got 1. I'll pull up the proper statistics here for you. So in terms of wins, Verstappen's got 1, Bottas has 1, Hamilton has 1, Ricciardo has 1, and Nico Rosberg has 1. Sergio Perez has 2. And in terms of podiums, he massively leads the way here. He has 5 podiums at this track. The closest one to him is Sebastian Vettel on 3. So Sergio Perez, way out in front of everyone in terms of this track. He has the most points here. He has scored 115 points at the Baku Street Circuit. Second place is Lewis Hamilton with 85. So yeah, Sergio Perez, very, very good here in the race. Charles Leclerc, in terms of pole positions, is leading the way on that. He has 3, and it was Rosberg, Hamilton, Vettel, and Bottas on 1. So look for a Charles Leclerc pole this weekend. So Sergio Perez, not only is the Red Bull feeling a little bit better this weekend, but this is a track where he is incredible. So Sergio Perez also in the mix this weekend, 3rd in that free practice session. Lando Norris was 4th, Carlos Sainz 5th, Oscar Piastri 6th, Fernando Alonso in 7th, George Russell in 8th, Charles Leclerc in 9th, despite only doing 11 laps due to the crash, and then Daniel Ricciardo in 10th. Something else interesting in the Haas teams was that in FP1, Behrman beat Hülkenberg by just over a tenth of a second. Esteban Ocon had engine issues as well, didn't get many laps done in there. Now, as we go into FP2, the engine issues instead went to George Russell. Now, George Russell was out for the first 20 minutes or so of the practice session, getting a new engine in the car. Then when he went out, he said that he wasn't really necessarily feeling right. So there is a potential big engine change for George Russell coming, which may also bring a grid penalty along with it. Charles Leclerc at the start of the session was really struggling. Of course, they rebuilt that car, and he just said it was not feeling right. Came back into the pits. They had to rebuild it basically again. But at the end of the session, he finished top. Leclerc on top of FP2, and in second place, Sergio Perez, 0.006 off the back of Leclerc in FP2. Hamilton was 3rd, Sainz in 4th, Piastri 5th, Verstappen in P6, but very close all around, half a second just covering the top 5. Lando Norris not in the top 5, he was down in 17th, but he didn't do a run on the soft tyres, so don't read too much into that one. But from there, we have a very, very close top 8 here. What I'd say from what I've seen today is of those top 4 cars, I think the McLaren is the slowest, but the most stable. Like, the Ferrari, both Leclerc and Sainz have had issues with it today. It seems like every 4th corner, it just doesn't want to turn. The Mercedes, for Lewis, seems to be all right. He's had that seat heating issue again that he had in Monza, but apart from that, it's been okay. Russell's got those engine problems, which they hopefully can fix from there. With the Red Bulls, it seems to be a lot better, but every now and again they go on board with Max and he's just facing the wrong way, so there might be something there. With McLaren, they seem stable, but their times are not on the rest of the guys. Like if we look at FP1, Lando was 4 tenths off, Oscar was 7 tenths off. Then in FP2 again, Oscar was 4 tenths off. So it's only free practice session, but what we might see in the race is maybe the McLarens not being as quick, maybe in the race or qualifying, but they have that consistency where they can push the car more and more and more and can maybe fight through that to come out at the end. So that is something very interesting to go into this race, which I think will be very, very exciting. Let's go into our predictions, though. And as I say, every week, I've never got a prediction wrong. Never, ever in my life. So here are my two predictions. Firstly, Max Verstappen wins. I'm feeling it. I know I predicted it before. I know I've said a few times here, Max is going to win, and he hasn't. But I feel like Red Bull are back. And I might be in that position that like Mercedes fans were over the last few years, where they look good in a practice session, they go, yeah, they're back. And I might look a fool on Sunday. And I'm very welcome to look a fool on Sunday, but I feel it this time. Max Verstappen is winning this race. Prediction number 2. Oscar Piastri is going to outscore Lando Norris this weekend. I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I think I've just been thinking too much about the McLaren team order stuff, and just McLaren in general, and it's been taking me back to the past when I was that McLaren fan, watching my two favourite drivers, Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso, and thinking, McLaren, why have you done this to me? Why have you taken my dreams and turned them into pain? Why? Since those days, McLaren has been a bleak place for me, a place that was once full of such joy, was turned to tears, and since then I haven't forgiven McLaren, and I'm not sure if I ever will. And for that reason, I'm predicting Piastri to outscore Lando Norris. This might be the longest preview video I think I've ever done. I hope you've enjoyed. We're back tomorrow for all things Azerbaijan qualifying. Then on Sunday, we are here for all things F1 and F2. On Monday is driver ratings. All of that to come this weekend, so subscribe for that. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye!